Good evening and welcome to this edition of KTN Prime. My name is Betty Kyalo.
And I'm James Smart. But first, the highlights. Gagging the media, controversial bill published at last.
We have agreed that we will engage at every level to ensure that there is a smooth transfer of all the functions.
Discord in Jubilee, government seeks to tame governors.
For the love of the children, woman's suicide mission.
And no politics, please. Mirror dealers in court drama. Good evening once more. Well, we begin tonight with the story of a fresh attempt by the government to control what we broadcast on television.
Well, a new published bill seeks to take away the power of self-regulation from the media and give it to a state body.
Now, if the law is passed by Parliament, it could give the Communications Authority wide-ranging powers, including stopping certain broadcasts altogether.
Indeed, we will be bringing that story later on in this bulletin. To stay with that now. Now to that story about Discord in Jubilee, and it is the story of governors who want a referendum to allow for more money for counties.
Well, the government here in Nairobi now says it wants to agree with the governors and own the referendum agenda.
Where the unhappy governors met Deputy President William Ruto earlier today to discuss the standoff.
KTN senior political reporter Aaron Ocheng has more.
He can be described as a man who is ruffling the feathers of the 4-month-old Jubilee government from within. And today, Bomet Governor Isaac Ruto, together with other governors, were in a closed-door talks with top government officials, led by Deputy President William Ruto. The subject of the 4-hour-long meeting culminates from the stand that Bomet Governor Isaac Ruto is spearheading in the quest to push the central government to fully empower the counties. Ruto is pushing for a referendum to, among other things, increase budgetary allocation to the counties and fully empower the Senate. But after the meeting, Ruto seemed to have changed his tone.
We have said we are now engaging with all the stakeholders, including government. Remember, that has been a discussion as of last week between us and the Senate. Indeed, we would like to carry everybody on board to understand those issues. And if we can resolve those issues, the better.
The combative governor has lately been on a warpath, accusing President Uhuru Kenyatta and his deputy William Ruto of frustrating devolution, particularly by blocking resources from going to the grassroots. But today's meeting resolved that if there is need for a referendum, then it should be an initiative of the central government and not the governors or senators.
The president and myself and the government is clear that this is a matter that must be done in the way the Constitution anticipated, and we have readied our mechanisms.
The meeting also resolved to convene a meeting of all 47 governors and senators in a week's time to square out the matter.
We will have a meeting, hopefully, end of this week, with the CIC, with CRA, with Transition Authority, with the relevant ministries, with the governors, with representatives of Legal Committee of Parliament, with representatives of Legal Committee of the Senate, so that there is no pull and push.
In Bungoma, Governor Ken Lusaka and Senator Moses Wetangula announced that they will not relent on a plan to have the Senate get more powers to enable devolution take off.
I think discussions are ongoing, and that is one of the options that is open to us if what we are asking for is not given.
If you want a referendum, obviously you know that you must collect 1 million signatures from Kenyans to give you the green light. And we have agreed with governors in Mombasa that as and when we require those signatures, they will collect them.
They were speaking in Bungoma after the launch of the Bungoma County Strategic Plan. Aaron Ocheng, KTN.
Now from devolution to family matters. The next story is about a love triangle that almost drove a woman to her death earlier today. The woman named as Hilda nearly killed herself and her 10-year-old son after she set their house on fire. She was apparently angered by the husband who she says left her and ran off with another woman. KTN's Ashamulu has these details.
A 10-year-old boy writhes in pain on a hospital bed. Today, he was at death's door, but was lucky enough to live to tell the story. The place he calls home is now a burnt shell. But perhaps what adds salt to his injuries is the fact that the person responsible for this pain is seated right beside his hospital bed, his mother. Hilda is nursing more than just her burns. She's also nursing a grand humiliation at a botched attempt to kill herself and her 2 children. Hilda is not shy to narrate how she put her 10- and 3-year-old sons to bed early this morning before setting their house ablaze, all for one reason.
Mzee wangu alioa na akaniacha na watoto. Alienda akapotelea kwa huyo mwanamke huko Kabandogo. Ni kwa vile sikuwa na uwezo wowote, nikaona badala ya kuhangaika nijitoe uhai na watoto wangu.
Hilda's house in Mwiki is now only remnants of what was her property. Only her 3-year-old son managed to run to safety, with neighbors having to put out the fire to save Hilda and her firstborn.
Tukaona moto ikitokea kwa nyumba yao. Mosi kubwa sana. Na stima tumesima. Hakuna nisi ya stima. Mosi kubwa kama ile ya tairi. Ile nyeusi kabisa, nyeusi. Sasa ndio watu wakakuja wakasaidia.
After her case is probed by the police and heard by the courts, Hilda will know whether or not she will get to keep her 2 sons. All that her children have left for now are burns to nurse and a burnt down house to call home. Ashamwilu, KTN Prime.
All right, and now an update from the ICC, and the ICC prosecutor Fatou Bensouda has now filed her appeal against the decision by the trial chamber allowing Deputy President William Samoei Ruto to miss most of his trial at the ICC. In her appeal, Bensouda argues that the law requires the accused, William Ruto, to be present throughout the trial. The prosecutor is challenging the decision that the chamber has open powers to excuse an accused person from attending most of the trial. The ICC Trial Chamber 5 had conditionally granted the request of William Samoei Ruto to be excused from being physically present continuously throughout the trial, scheduled to start on 10th September 2013, with the exception of a number of sessions, including the opening and closing statements of all parties and participants.
Coming back home, let's take you back to Naivasha, where angry residents chased away government officials yesterday. Today, many of those residents of Narasha village began rebuilding their homes. But as KTN's Angel Katusa reports, some have lost more than just their homes. A number of children are still missing as well.
This was the same Sunday government officials fleeing from angry residents of Narasha in Naivasha who were forcibly evicted and their houses torched. Monday, and the dust had seemingly settled and calm is returning to the area. Residents are slowly starting to rebuild their homes. But many residents like Lydia Kirusi are finding it hard to begin life afresh after their livelihoods were destroyed. She not only had her 3 houses torched and all her household burnt, she also cannot trace her 2 children. The mother of 3 says the 2 disappeared when the village was raided and everything wiped out.
Unakuta mama hana nyumba, mkono hakuna, mguu hakuna, pengine mzee ameumizwa kwa hospitali. Hata watoto wengine wamepotea paka wale hatujapata watoto watu wengine.
The evictions had brought everything to a standstill in this village. Schools turned into temporary shelters for some villagers and some converted to medical camps set up by the Kenya Red Cross Society.
Mambo sio mbaya na tunatarajia yale ambayo serikali wametuahidi tunangojea kuona ikitekeleza.
On Sunday, cabinet secretaries in the Ministry of Interior and Energy said the government was not involved in the evictions and those involved in the illegal evictions would be prosecuted. The controversial 3,000-acre piece of land is said to have been shared among members of different communities in the area, but members of the Maasai community here insist this is their ancestral land. Angel Katwise, KTN Prime.
All right, to the courts now, where Miraa traders rejected an attempt by politicians to join a case they have filed over the now controversial crop.
The traders are opposed to the attempt to classify the crop as a narcotic drug.
Well, the politicians claimed they too were interested in the case, but as Winnie Kamau now reports, they bit more than they could chew.
A heated exchange of words between the legislators and the Nyambene Miraa Traders Association. All this in the quest to safeguard the livelihoods of Miraa farmers.
Tumesema mambo ya bunge waendelee kufanya kazi parliament na sisi tuendelee na mambo yetu ya Miraa. Kesi yetu haiwahusu.
The argument ensued after the traders declined to have 10 legislators led by Gembe South MP Mithika Linturi and woman rep Florence Kajuju from being enjoined in the Miraa suit as interested parties. The traders who were in court before Justice Isaac Lenaola told the court that they did not want their suit politicized.
Sisi ni Nyambene Miraa Trade Association, sio chama cha siasa. Sasa nasikia leo wameingia wote wanasiasa.
Nyambene Miraa Association, led by Japheth Morocco, wants the court to stop NACADA from implementing their decision declaring and classifying Miraa as narcotic drug pending the hearing and determination of their case. The traders, farmers and consumers of Miraa, through their lawyer Henry Kurauka, told the court that their livelihoods depend on the crop and as such the court should act in their interest. But in a twist of events, NACADA distanced itself from the contentious classification that could effectively lead to the banning of Miraa in the country. Justice Lenaola, however, enjoined the MPs into the suit and directed the traders and the legislators to consult and agree on the way forward by 18th August. The British government announced that it had banned the export of Miraa from Kenya in mid-June this year. With a declaration by NACADA that Miraa is not a banned substance, what next? Winnie Kamau reporting for KTN.
Well, interesting developments at the courts now across the country. Teachers are still hoping that the government will yield and pay them their July salaries. But in the meantime, KTN has learned that many of those teachers may be on a go-slow following the decision to withhold their pay. KTN's Edith Kimani reports on the latest battlefront in the teachers' pay saga.
Right from the get-go, teachers knew what they wanted from their strike. Money. And money they got. Though not their exact demands, the Kenya National Union of Teachers was able to negotiate with government commuter allowances and responsibility allowances. But today, money is still troubling teachers.
Nangojea mshahara wa mwezi huu ili niweze kulipa program yangu ya school based. Pia tunangojea hiyo mshahara ili niweze kulipa nyumba yangu na kufanya mambo mengine mengi.
You cannot come here and tell us we pay people for not working. It doesn't make sense. Are we together? Please, rules and regulations must be followed to the letter.
A declaration that has thrown the Kenya National Union of Teachers on the defensive.
Should the teachers fail to receive their salaries as expected, the National Executive Council of the Kenya National Union of Teachers shall be summoned to advise the steering committee and give authority to the Secretary General, who is me, on which step to take.
Both sides now seem caught in a cold war, even before the embers of their last fire have died down. Students appear to be facing the brunt once more as teachers in various parts of the country allegedly stage a go-slow awaiting their July pay slips.
Kama una matumaini ya mshahara, unaona serikali kwamba consider kwamba nyinyi ni valuable and then una lose hope.
The hopelessness may yet continue as Treasury seeks to tighten the country's purse strings.
The Treasury will continue to put in place prudent measures to overcome fiscal challenges that we continue face.
Parents are now holding their breath, waiting to see who between the teachers and government will put their money where their mouth is. Edith Kimani, KTN Prime.
And back to our top story this evening, the story of a fresh attempt by the government to control what we broadcast on television.
Indeed, a newly published bill seeks to take away the power of self-regulation from the media and give it to a state body.
Now, if the law is passed by Parliament, it could give the Communications Authority wide-ranging powers, including stopping certain broadcasts altogether.
KTN's political editor Ben Kitili reports on the move that has raised new questions on media freedom.
As we seek to entrench and expand media freedom, we must recognize that freedom must come hand in hand with a deep sense of responsibility.
Despite the Jubilee administration's word not to gag the press, the state is still sending mixed signals to media practitioners. The Kenya Information and Communications Amendment Bill 2013 has been published, and it contains loopholes to potentially gag the press. Section 5A of the bill states in part that the yet to be established Communications Authority of Kenya shall be free of any sort of control by the state, political or commercial interests. However, Section 5B of the bill states that the right to freedom of the media and freedom of expression may be limited for the purposes and to the extent set out in this act or any other written law. The same states that, quote, the right to freedom of expression shall not extend to the spread of propaganda for war, incitement to violence, the spread of hate speech or advocacy of hatred, end of quote. Ambiguous terms that can easily be used to control the media. The management of the Communications Authority lies on the shoulders of a chairperson appointed by the President, the Communication Cabinet Secretary, his counterparts in Treasury, Internal Security, as well as 7 other persons appointed by the Communication Secretary, making it rather easy to make the board a government entity. In addition, the authority will be given the power to establish a committee that will administer broadcasting content, formulate media standards, and regulate and monitor compliance with those standards. In short, this committee will assume the functions of the Media Council. Kenyan media practitioners will see this piece of legislation as retrogressive by the executive arm of the government at a time when Parliament has been at loggerheads with the press as well. Ben Kitili, KTN.
Well, this is KTN Prime. Welcome back. Now, a hippo by the sea is not a very frequent sight, but in Malindi, that is what residents had to contend with this morning.
Well, the unwelcome guest that was spotted by tourists caused a stir on the beach, prompting wildlife authorities to hunt it down. The hippo is suspected to have been pushed by turbulent waves into the ocean from the nearby Sabaki River.
Well, according to KWS officers, the hippo had charged at them, forcing them to shoot and kill it. And as is now common practice, residents from nearby villages promptly slaughtered the animal and got for themselves some free lunch.
Imebebwa na maji kutoka River Sabaki, so hatungeweza kuirudisha kule, so hatukuwa na any alternative ni kuimaliza tu.
Nyama kama hii na tunasikia raha sana, hata nyumbani watafurahi.
Definitely a big cost, that one. Now, the year was 1954. White farmers leaving the country faced the dilemma of disposing of exotic breeds of cattle they had bought in for zero grazing.
Well, others shied away. One man took a risk to buy the cattle and changed his life and that of his neighbors.
For almost 6 decades, George Ndirangu has begun his day outside this shed with his cattle. His family puts his age at between 96 and 100 years, but despite the inevitable frailty that old age brings, George has stuck to this schedule. It is this that won him his independence as Kenya gained hers. The year was 1939. The colonial master had a firm grip on the country. Up until then, most farmers simply traded the surplus produce for what they needed. Now they needed money to pay the tax imposed by the colonial master.
Sisi tulikuwa wakalimu kabisa. Kama sasa huyu nataka oa. Akiwa nilika yangu namsaidia ng'ombe au mbuzi. Free of charge. Maana hana pesa. Ndio hiyo tunasaidia na mambo hiyo. Ikabadilika kabisa. Maana kila mtu alijua pesa ni kitu gani. Sisi tulikuwa hatujui pesa ni nini.
George was lucky. As the Second World War raged, the British government sought extra hands to help in the war effort. The military trained George as a mechanic. He left his beloved Kiambu and moved to Nairobi, where he lived amongst the British, ate with them and learned from them. By the 1950s, British nationals were beginning to leave the country to return home. A section of these had been farmers, and they faced the dilemma of just what to do with the exotic breeds of cattle that they had brought in.
Tafikiri walileta kutoka kwao. Ng'ombe hizi ile yetu ya hapana hii. Ile yetu ni ile ilikuwa nundu pale.
He saw a mzungu in Gilgil who was zero grazing, and he came back. He went to the Wazungus then in the 1950s and asked for the permits. It was a process, and with some assistance of some Wazungu friends of his, he got the permit, and he brought the first. I think there were Jersey breeds in 1954.
And thus George set off. With barely an acre of land and a little shed, George scraped together the money to buy the cows and became one of the first Kenyans to venture into zero grazing. And as more colonialists left, so his herd grew. But as with all things new, there were hurdles to overcome.
By 1960, he was very stable, and since then he has never stopped. But between 1950s and coming to 1960s, there were a lot of ups and downs. There was a time he lost nearly all the animals because of outbreaks. But he soldiered on. By 1960, he was home and dry.
And as Kenya matured, so did the little venture grow. The changing political landscape and the developing infrastructure meant more farmers were willing to try zero grazing. He would lend a hand to another farmer who showed interest. Njenga Karume had heard what Ndirango was doing and wanted to venture into zero grazing too.
Very many people from as far as Murang'a used to come to him just to learn and to understand how you do the exotic breeds. That was in late 60s and early 70s. Even here, there were very few people who were doing the hybrids.
By 1963, Kenya had gained her independence. A section of those who had fought for it then ventured into politics, but not George. He had found his place. It is this attitude that he would pass on to the next generation. His nephew is an independence baby. He grew up on the farm and today manages another branch.
These last 5 years, this business has shifted from old hands to young hands. And again, the prices of milk and milk products has really improved. It is now a business. It's not, a hobby for an old man going home for retire. It is a business. The market is huge. Kenyans are also now enjoying milk products, yogurt, butter, ghee, and all this. And I think the market is still very wide.
The farm as it is today bears little resemblance to the farm that George started. Technology has found its place here, and 26 cows, all hybrids of the Frisian breed, now graze contentedly in the small space. Similar operations have sprung up across the country, and many more flock to the farm for lessons. The man who sits and watches the world go by takes none of this for granted. This opportunity is what he and others fought for. His age means his movement is limited, but in his mind's eye, he sees far into the past, as far as the early struggles against the white man's rule, and he allows his mind to wander back to the present, to the fruits of that struggle. Wilkis Anyabwa for the 50-year series.
The Big Q, in association with Nguvu Cement.
Well, Kenya 50 happens every Monday with our very own Will Kiss.
Which they claim will increase the cost of doing business locally. In a statement to newsrooms, the association's chief executive Betty Minor claimed that over 10 counties had instituted illegal fees and levies that are already hindering growth of businesses. Now, according to Minor, if let to be, the levies will lead to unacceptable high cost of business, which will have a severe and negative impact on the private sector. Additionally, this cost, an analyst will be quick to point out, that will add to the rising inflation cost and a general increase in the cost of living in the country. Among the counties cited by CAM include Machakos, Homa Bay, Mombasa, Malindi, Taita, Nyeri, Embu, Kwale, Kilifi, Murang'a and Kajiado. CAM now says they are open to dialogue with the counties to find an amicable way forward. Sticking to Matters County, the profile of Kwale County is set to change as it fast becomes the country's location for valuable natural resources. Following the discovery of niobium valued at just about $35 billion, now residents are coming to terms with the changing fortunes of their area. But the mining company has assured that royalties from the mining will be shared with the local residents.
Discovery of rare earth valued at close to $64 billion and one of the top 5 deposits in the world definitely puts Mrima Hills in Kwale County on the global map. The global demand for rare earths as well as niobium has meant the value of the finds could only go up. According to the mining company KTN Kenya, the current combined mineral export from Kenya are valued at $90 million, and Kwale's production will boost the mineral sector contribution to $240 million, making it one of the country's top foreign exchange earners.
We're looking to put in a plant that would have 750,000 tons per annum processing through the front end, and that would give us about 15 years mine life on the niobium.
Mining projects in the country have, however, come into sharp focus over how they relate to the local communities. The secretive manner in which they are carried out has led to conflict in the past, but KTN is looking to avoid all that.
Wouldn't displace anybody at all. It is focused directly in the forest area.
Tukakubaliana kwamba mambo ya kuhamishwa hakuna, na pia kazi itafanywa tu hapo eneo la hapo juu kwenye forest juu peke yake, na kaya italindwa kama kawaida.
The mining company plans to remit 80% of these earnings to the central government, 15% to Kwale County, and 5% will be set aside for the locals as well as job opportunities. Michael Karanja, KTN Business Today.
And there is more good news as Kenya has signed a 13.2 billion shilling credit with the World Bank to fund various water projects in Nyanza, Western and Central Kenya, expected to benefit approximately 20,000 people. That's just about 2,100 households in Western and Nyanza. Now, this is a flagship project of the Kenya Agricultural Sector Development Strategy, with a loan expected to develop to complement government long-term plans in the water sector. Now, the projects are designed to lay foundation of supporting investments in a phased approach and will also support the implementation of key water sector reforms. Now, the first phase of the project will be implemented over the next 7 years.
The financing agreement signed today represents phase 1 of a proposed total of $750 million.
Let me also underscore the need of the implementing ministry and other agencies to fast track the process of ensuring the project meets the effectiveness conditions for timely execution of the project, so that we can achieve our national development goals for the better livelihoods of all Kenyans.
Finally, Equity Bank is focusing on attracting business from Asia as trade opportunities between Kenya and the East grows. The bank said this as it released its half-year financial results that saw its profit grow by 17%. Adelaide Changole has that report.
Equity
Equity Bank, which controls 57% of all bank accounts in the country, is turning its focus from its traditional banking model towards the investment sphere as it seeks to capitalize on opportunities presenting themselves in the market thanks to rising trade between Kenya and China.
When you look at Chinese trade flow as a percentage of Kenyan GDP, we're saying just one country, the trading relationship is equal to 6% of the GDP.
Equity has set up a specialized branch focusing on Chinese banking, in addition to shoring up its payment processing systems to allow merchant traders access a myriad of services from just one point of sale. This, the bank hopes, will not only allow them to tap the Chinese market, but also attract other Asian traders in the region.
I would like to prepare the investors that you see Equity aggressively positioning itself to be the conduit and the channel for all trade towards Asia.
Moreover, the payment system will allow more diaspora remittances to be remitted through the bank, growing Equity's market share in the sector from the current 16% to 30%.
70% of all that remittances is for investment either in real estate or in the stock exchange. And again, that gives us a huge opportunity.
Equity posted a 17% increase in pre-tax profit for the first half of the year, rising from 7.6 billion shillings last year to 9 billion shillings this year. Adelaide Changole, KTN Business Today.
And of course, business news is incomplete without the market numbers. So here are the financial markets review.